We've got Caspar Craven here, and my goodness, what a story this is. Good afternoon, Caspar. How are you?
Good afternoon. I'm fabulous. It's great to be here.
Caspar Craven is a sought-after keynote speaker on leadership, team building, and dealing with adversity. Thanks to 30 years business experience and successful sailings around the globe in the world's toughest yacht race. On one of those round-the-world sailings, his young family were on the racing yacht with him, and now Caspar's published a new book which tells that story. So, previous to taking your family around the world, you've had, 20 or 30 years in business? What kind of business?
I used to work at a big accountancy firm, and then after that, set up a number of my own businesses, both big companies and small.
And what about your obsession then with yachts?
Well, I grew up on the south coast of England, and when I was 14, I had a little fishing boat which I found and repaired.
Yeah.
And so I've always sort of been playing around on the water, and I've always had a lifelong love of the sea.
Wow. So you'd previously gone into yacht racing before taking your family around the world. How did you do in those previous races?
The first part of that, we raced across the Atlantic, and we were the first boat to get into Boston, so that was pretty special.
Wow.
But we carried on after that. We were doing pretty well. We had an unfortunate accident in the middle of Wellington Harbour, actually, where we drove into another boat.
You're not supposed to do that, are you?
Yeah, no, you're really not supposed to do that. So they actually disqualified us from the rest of the race after that. So we did okay. We were pretty quick. So.
And what is it about yacht racing that is so appealing? I know that's like a corny question, but it's dangerous. Is it the speed? Is it the competitive element? Is it that it's so different from business or accountancy or whatever it is you're working at? It's the polar opposite of everything you know, right?
Absolutely. It's just you're out there and kind of got your life in your hands.
Yeah.
And you're dealing with, whatever comes up. It's a great fun.
Yeah, but it's a bit damp, isn't it? It's a bit cramped.
dangerous.
It's a bit dangerous. A bit
Clothes.
windy.
What about the clothes?
Satellite television. Can't get your clothes dry
A
ever.
microwave?
Oh, they might have a microwave.
We did have a microwave, actually. We used to store the eggs in the microwave, and we had one storm, and the microwave door flew open, and the eggs went flying across. So the pancakes were off the menu after that.
What's the most days you've been at sea non-stop?
That would have been on that previous yacht race, so 40 days at a time.
Right. And do you go a bit crazy?
Yes, a little bit. I mean, the thing is, it depends who's around you. I mean, sailing is all about the people and your team who are with you.
Yeah.
On that race, there was 18 strong personalities. The skill is not about sailing a boat and pulling ropes. It's all about how do you deal with people, and especially when those people are your wife and your 3 young kids.
Then how did they react when you first mooted this idea?
Well, actually, it was my wife's idea to go and do this. So we were in our mid-30s, and, we were getting along. We were busy with work. Money was tight, and we had arguments about our money and relationship. And my wife said, why don't we go and do something like sail around the world? So actually, it all came from her.
And had she sailed before?
Twice.
Just twice?
Just twice.
And so you'd previously had some experience, obviously the experience that you've had racing around the world. So she hadn't had any experience, you had. And what about your kids?
When we had the idea, that we had 2 kids then, they were aged 4 and 2, they had experience playing around on boats, so my fishing dinghy down the South Devon and things like that. But we had 5 years to get ready for it.
Right.
So over that 5 years, then we just sort of built up everyone's experience on both small boats and bigger boats, just to get everyone comfortable.
Even so, they were very young to undertake a trip like this, weren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. When we left, they were 9, 7 and 2.
I mean, I can't even imagine how I would manage for a day when my kids were that age. The amount of paraphernalia you need for kids, just to dress them and to keep them amused, and the food and the drink. I mean, you think about just packing for a day trip, let alone packing to stay in a boat.
And then, Caspar, are we nearly near land yet?
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, so we've just had a half-term week, right? And I can imagine there's parents all over the country rejoicing at the fact their kids have now gone back to school.
Of course.
And it's like, I'm stuck on a boat with my wife and 3 kids for 3 weeks at a time.
Yeah.
And but kids are going to be kids wherever they are in the world. My little 2-year-old, she had this big green bucket with all her Lego in it, and she poured the Lego on the floor. And when you walk on Lego with bare feet, and it really, really
like
hurts. That same on a boat, right? So we had all those things to deal with.
Looking at the book, and this is a cliche coming, obviously it wasn't all plain sailing.
No, we had a few challenges.
Take us through one or two of the challenges.
The first thing was actually just adapting to life on board. That whole thing being 24/7 with your wife and kids. The best thing about what we did was spending 24/7 with my wife and kids. The hardest thing was exactly the same.
Yeah.
But, we had a fairly dramatic incident in the middle of the South Pacific Ocean where we had power failure on the boat and we lost the steering system, we lost the navigation systems, and we're literally 500 miles from the nearest piece of land. And we had to figure out how do we deal with that. And we just literally worked together as a team. We found the humour in it. We told the kids that we didn't have any working toilets anymore. And we showed them the buckets. They were lining up on deck to get a toilet in the bucket and chuck it over the side. And they just thought the whole thing was hilarious.
Yeah, that is not the kind of sitcom I'd want to be in.
So how did you solve that issue then? I'm intrigued.
So literally for 4 days, my wife and I, we had to hand steer the boat.
Wow.
We took apart all of the diesel engine system. The eventual problem was dirty diesel. So it ends up like sort of chewing gum-like lumps in the diesel, and that blocked the diesel pipes.
Wow.
And we got to the next island, and then we figured it out there.
How many other ships are around you?
On that particular passage, there were a handful of boats, but they weren't particularly close.
Oh, okay.
But we sailed in company of other boats. So we joined something called the World Arc. So there were 14 other boats, and we sailed around the world in company of these friends of ours. So.
And people, presumably, back at home were tracking your every move and finding out where you were. I mean, it's like that movie, isn't it? It's a bit like that movie that was out about a year ago.
Which one?
Oh, the one that was similar to this story.
Not the Jurassic Park one.
No, it wasn't the dinosaurs one, Tim. It was about somebody who went round in a ship.
The one with Colin Firth.
Yeah, exactly.
But you also had to meet up with some ships, didn't you, to get spares at one point, and that was quite dangerous because they had to sail quite close to you.
Yeah, that was in the Indian Ocean. We have the rigging wires, which are the bits of wire that hold the mast up. And yeah, some of those started to break. We lashed them down as best as we could, but it got to the point where we needed some other material, they were called D-clamps. And some friends of ours came and sailed quite close to us, and we did this boat transfer in the middle of the ocean. So
I know this is going to sound like a crazy question, but if you're in the middle of the Pacific or wherever it is you are, how do you get your message out? Are you using email? Are you using mobile phones, sat phones? Tell us about some of that.
One of the radio systems we had is called the SSB radio. It stands for single sideband.
That'd be shortwave type thing.
That's long range radio.
Oh, okay.
And you're speaking to the other boats that are around you. So there's other 14 boats that we sailed with.
Right.
But we also had satellite phone. So if we ever had a medical problem, we could call up Falmouth Coast Guard and we could get radio medical advice. And we also had email on board telling people what we were up to. So.
Okay, give us an idea of the size of the boat.
So 53 feet, 16 metres.
Is that all?
That's all, yeah.
Seriously?
Yep.
Now, that's what I call claustrophobic.
How many cabins?
4 cabins. And central area, we had the saloon. And literally every day we'd share all 3 meals together. And we'd sit round and we'd talk. But I promise you, with 3 kids on board, the boat shrinks.
How different do you think it's made them? What are the changes that you've seen in the kids?
They're certainly very confident. They have a curiosity about the world. We met some amazing people and they shared their passion and enthusiasm. So Columbus, my son, I know appropriately named, he has a fascination with the natural world. And now he has an allotment and he does lots of gardening now. He loves fishing. So rather than being on his digital devices, he's just fascinated with things like that.
Your son's called Columbus.
Called Columbus, yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. What's the other one? Magellan?
We've got a bluebell under the willow.
Oh, yeah. Excellent. Excellent. That's just fantastic. So, it's interesting what you might learn about yourself and what you might learn about your family. Did you lose many friends? I bet you lost a couple here and there, didn't you?
It's interesting. The common reaction is people either think we're the best parents in the world or we're the most irresponsible people that you've ever met.
Yeah.
But actually, once you explain the thinking behind it and the level of preparation you go to go and do this, we had 5 years preparing. Once you understand that, then a lot of people got on board with the idea.
What's your next trip? Into space?
Actually, last summer we did a trip from up to Canada, and this one we're going to sail down to Mexico. Not space.
Wow, fantastic. Well, it's a great story, and the book is really, really good. I actually read it last night. I was so impressed. It was brilliant. Caspar Craven's book, Where the Magic Happens, How a Young Family Changed Their Lives and Sailed Around the World, is out now. Might you be thinking a movie?
That would be lovely.
Yeah. Would you want to star in it as the captain, obviously?
I had the privilege of meeting several months ago, Joanna Lumley, and the first question she asked me is, who would you want to play you in the movie? And I think my wife chose Colin Firth, but I think that she would want to be in it. He's been there.
Yeah. Caspar, great to meet you, and it's a great book. Thank you very much. Caspar Craven, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Nice to meet you.